Imagine a faith tradition that springs not from Rome or Constantinople, but from the heart of ancient Africa, rooted in centuries-old Kemet spirituality, rising in the highlands of Axum, and flourishing long before much of Europe even embraced the cross. This is the story of Ethiopian Christianity, a living bridge between the divine traditions of Kemet and the wider Christian world. Today we'll explore how early African believers wove their ancestral rites into the new faith, how they became missionaries of Christianity to Europe, and how, in turn, Europeans sought to overwrite that heritage. Join me on a journey through time as we uncover the true origins of a faith both ancient and dynamic. More than 3 millennia ago, the civilization of Kemet, what we now call ancient Egypt, stood on the Nile's life-giving banks. Their priests chanted hymns to Amun-Ra, Karnak. They sought harmony, Mat, between humanity and the cosmos. They rehearsed rites of rebirth along the river's ebb and flow, held festivals marking the inundation that ensured fertility, and inscribed spells to guide souls through the Duat. All across Kemet, the living world was suffused with divine presence, from the pharaoh, seen as Horus incarnate, to the humble scribe invoking Thoth. It is here, in these millennia of ritual and myth, that the spiritual DNA of Ethiopian Christianity finds its roots. When new ideas first drifted south, they found a people already fluent in the language of symbols, rites, and sacred texts. A people for whom the boundary between earthly and heavenly realms was porous and immediate. That sensibility would leave an indelible mark on how they received and reshaped the Christian message. By the 1st century CE, the kingdom of Axum had emerged in the highlands of what is now northern Ethiopia and Eritrea. Axum's merchants sailed the Red Sea, trading ivory and gold for Mediterranean wares. Its capital boasted grand stone obelisks. Its coinage bore the image of its king. Here, too, came the first Christians, merchants, travelers, perhaps refugees fleeing Roman persecution, bearing stories of a Nazarene preacher who spoke of a God-made man. Local tradition holds that 2 young Syrians, Frumentius and his brother Iodesius, shipwrecked on these shores in 316 CE. Taken captive and then entrusted to the royal court, they caught the eye of King Ezena's mother. Frumentius, in particular, guided the young prince in Christian teaching. When they returned to Alexandria, Frumentius urged the bishop to consecrate him as the first bishop of Axum. By 330 CE, Ezana proclaimed Christianity the state religion, making Axum one of the world's earliest Christian kingdoms, long before the Gothic tribes of Europe laid down their pagan beliefs. But this was no simple importation of Roman rites. In Ethiopia, the gospel met the rich tapestry of Kemet ceremonial life. The use of incense and holy oils, processions that called upon heaven, a reverence for the sun's journey, a cosmic drama already familiar to worshippers of Ra. The Ark of the Covenant, said to rest in Axum's Church of St. Mary of Zion, echoed Kemet's reverence for sacred relics. Ge'ez, the ancient liturgical language, was shaped by Semitic roots, yet spiced with local metaphors of Nile-like rivers of grace. The Ethiopian calendar itself, inherited in part from the Egyptian solar year and the division of the day into prayer hours, recall the canonical hours of Kemetic temple life. And just as the pharaoh was seen as intermediary between gods and people, Ethiopian emperors claimed divine sanction, acting not by their own right, but by the will of Christ, preserving a royal priestly model that reached back to the dawn of their civilization. In the rugged hills and remote plateaus, Ethiopian ascetics took desert monasticism to new heights. Inspired by the Egyptian desert fathers, Antony, Pachomius, and the rest, they embraced solitude, fasting, and ceaseless prayer. Lalibela's rock-hewn churches carved in the 12th and 13th centuries testify to a devotion both monumental and intimate. Each cave cell and communal refectory bore witness to a spirituality that saw every stone as imbued with the spirit of worship. Their hagiographies, lives of the saints, sang of visions and miracles, of angels guiding the faithful, echoing the prophetic traditions of Kemet, where priests once recorded celestial secrets on papyrus. Ethiopian Christianity was, in every fiber, a continuation and transformation of Africa's earliest sacred heritage. Long before the missionary movements of the 19th century, Ethiopia stood as a Christian exemplar. In the medieval period, European pilgrims spoke in awed tones of the exotic churches of Axum and Lalibela. Even the Crusaders sent envoys to the Prester John, a fabled Christian king said to dwell beyond Muslim lands. Some European clerics traveled to Ethiopia to learn about liturgy, chant, and monastic rule, bringing back manuscripts that enriched Western libraries. Bertrandon de la Brocquière, a Burgundian traveler of the 15th century, marveled at Ethiopian priests who read the Bible in Ge'ez and performed rites older than many European cathedrals. In this sense, Ethiopia was not simply a recipient of Christian doctrine. It was a living archive, a teacher of rites and texts, preserving forms long lost in the Latin West after the collapse of the Roman Empire. All this changed in the 16th century, when Portuguese sailors, fresh from sea battles with the Ottomans, landed at Massawa. They found a Christian ally in Emperor Leibniz and later Susenyos. Yet Portugal's aim was not only political alliance, but spiritual unity. Jesuit priests arrived bearing the decree of Rome. Ethiopian rites must yield to Latin forms. They sought to replace the centuries-old Ge'ez liturgy with the Tridentine Mass, to supplant the ark-centered tabernacle with Western-style altar, to force celibacy on all clergy, even though Ethiopian priests had long married. At first, Susenyos acquiesced, hoping for Portuguese military aid against the Adal Sultanate, but the change cut him off from his people. Crowds revolted when Latin icons replaced their painted panels of the Archangel Michael, when fasts were shortened, when the ark was relegated to a glass box. Within a few years, Susenyos renounced the union, and his successor, Fasilides, expelled the Jesuits altogether in 1633, reasserting the ancient faith in its true African form. This episode left deep scars, a warning that faith, when severed from its roots, cannot so easily be imposed from without. Yet it also sparked a renewal. Ethiopian scholars recopied and restored Ge'ez manuscripts, rededicating churches in Lalibela. Monastic schools taught the ancient rites with renewed zeal. The expulsion of foreigners cemented a fierce pride in their own tradition, so that today the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church remains one of the oldest, most continuous expressions of early Christianity in the world. In their chants and murals, in the rhythmic tolling of the tablet bearer's giant drum, you still feel the echo of Kemet's temple chambers, the same sense of mystery and majesty that once stirred pharaonic priests. So what can we learn from this African story? That Christianity, far from a monolithic export of empire, is a living, breathing faith, reshaped by cultures, resilient in the face of outside pressure. The Ethiopian example reminds us that genuine faith grows from the soil of ancestral wisdom. When Europeans thought to correct or improve what they found, they only fractured a sacred continuity that had endured since the banks of the Nile. Today, as Africa rises again on the world stage, Ethiopian Christianity stands as both a beacon of ancient wisdom and a testament to the power of indigenous traditions. Its story challenges us to honor the origins of faith, to listen to voices beyond our own borders, and to recognize that sometimes the first teachers of Western Christendom may themselves have been those whom history has too long overlooked.